CNN is outraged that Donald Trump would flaunt social distancing in the Rose Garden. With this tweet, Jim Acosta says, the news conference was initially set up for social distancing. Then the White House rearranged the chairs before and after pics. Shocking. Why would Donald Trump do this? Well, we hear it from Brian Stelter of CNN. White House is using the press corps props, sending the message that social distancing is no longer necessary. My, why would Donald Trump do such a thing? And why are people so angry about this? You see, it's not just CNN. There are many other outlets that are trying to maintain a dual narrative that makes literally no sense. I kid you not. As the narratives collide, we end up with stories as absurd as this. NYPD is taking protesters' masks and putting them at risk of coronavirus in custody. Protesters are being held as long as 50 hours with no protective gear or ability to social distance from other protesters in custody or cops. What? These people are marching shoulder to shoulder. Governor Whitmer herself in Michigan marching shoulder to shoulder. These people are flaunting social distancing while they wag their finger at you and say, you can't go back to school. You can't go back to work. Your businesses can't reopen. Nothing makes sense. The only thing you will get from this is that these people have nothing but contempt and utter disdain for you. See, early on, we all agreed we should social distance. We were worried that this was going to spread and get really bad like we'd seen in other countries. We did. The thing they said was 15 days to slow the spread. Well, that turned into months, and we're technically still in the lockdown. Many small businesses no longer exist. They completely went under. Many large corporate chains also went under. Yet still, even with all the data, we are in this lockdown. However, recently, George Floyd protests erupted. And what did these politicians and media pundits say? Absolutely nothing. We all saw the photo and the video of the nurses blocking those trucks defiantly of those dumb rednecks who are going to get everybody sick and get grandma killed. Now what do we see? Nurses and medical practitioners outside in full protective gear clapping for people. And that's what I find so hilarious about this. When you look at this photo of Governor Whitmer of Michigan, who went after small businesses, she's wearing a mask. You know what that means? These people know there's a pandemic. They just don't care. Rules for thee, but not for me. So let's get started on the story. I want to go through once again really quickly the tweets from Jim Acosta, Brian Stelter, and another journalist. Before we do, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's many ways you can give. The best thing you can do is share this video. I'm competing with powerful mainstream media outlets that I am criticizing right now that won't tell you the truth. They'll argue both narratives at the exact same time. Protesters are being put at risk by cops who won't social distance. What? The protesters are choosing to go out and do this. You won't hear it in the mainstream media. You'll hear that Orange Man is bad because he also agrees. If you would like to help me compete, I don't have the big marketing budgets and YouTube props up these big channels. Sharing the video is the best thing you can do. Otherwise, if you want to just hang out and watch, click the like button, the notification bell, and subscribe for more videos. Here's Jim Acosta showing these images. And what's fascinating about this is it falls in line with a phenomenon we've seen basically the entire Trump presidency. Donald Trump follows the news, often watches Fox News, and he'll hear a story and later he'll repeat it. After he does, the media does a 180 and completely counters everything Trump said. Let me give you another example, and we'll come back to this and I'll explain this. Early on, in the coronavirus pandemic, TechCrunch.com published a story about, I believe it was a French study, showing hydroxychloroquine combined with azithromycin could help alleviate the symptoms of the coronavirus and thus help people recover faster. Donald Trump, within a week or two, began saying, did you hear about this? This is amazing. This hydroxychloroquine, it's really helping. All of a sudden, the media erupted, unproven, and dangerous. And then we saw a study emerge that all it did was look at a bunch of different stories, a bunch of different anecdotal data of instances where people were taking hydroxychloroquine. And they did a study, a grand overview of people who had the coronavirus, who took hydroxychloroquine and who didn't. And they concluded that hydroxychloroquine did increase your chance of death. That study, as of just yesterday, I believe, has been totally retracted. Think about how insane this is. The first studies come out saying it's good. Trump says it's good, so they must say it's bad. There's a famous article from the satirical website, news website, Babylon Bee. Ingenious move, Trump comes out in favor of impeachment, forcing Democrats to oppose. That's been the history of the Trump presidency. Now, I know, look, I'm not saying everybody, is a Trump supporter and everybody has to understand why that's relevant to you. But it is relevant to you because when you have the option of getting a medication that may or may not help you, follow your doctor's instructions, the media was willing to take that away from you for points. Which brings me to Jim Acosta's tweet. So the White House rearranged the chairs. Yeah, you know why? Because thousands upon thousands of people have been marching through the street for weeks and the media stopped caring. So what is Trump to say other than, I guess we're done with this? I mean, people are out, jobs are coming back, stores are reopening. It must be what's normal. As soon as Trump does it, once again, it's bad. And it really makes no sense. But here's a great example of this. John Carl, a reporter for ABC News, tweeted, "This is a flagrant violation of CDC guidelines on social distancing and a move that puts reporters at risk for the purpose of turning the press corps into a prop for a so-called press conference where the president refuses to answer a single question. Oh, harumph, I say, good journalist. You must be so angry about all of the protesters who are going out shoulder to shoulder, including Governor Whitmer. What's that? They've said nothing about this? Surprise, surprise. Here's a story from June 3rd. Chris Cuomo calls for police accountability. Too many people, or too many, see the protests as the problem. You're right, Chris Cuomo. The protests aren't the problem. Who cares if people aren't social distancing in the middle of a pandemic, right? That's right. Chris Cuomo actually thinks the protesters don't got to be peaceful either. He's blasted for suggesting protesters don't have to be peaceful. I bring you now to the ultimate betrayal. It goes beyond everything. This story from Politico. Suddenly, public health officials say social justice matters more than social distance. For months, health experts told Americans to stay home. Now many are encouraging the public to join mass protests. Who do we trust? Nothing seems to make sense. And I'll tell you this, man. The only thing I can conclude from all of this is that our leaders, our journalists, have nothing but hatred and disdain for the American people. They're all about tribe to the detriment of everyone else. And let me explain. You may be saying, Tim, no, they clearly care about the leftists. No, they don't. The pandemic is happening. Check this out. Mayor Bill de Blasio, apparently not too bright, can't explain why NYC saw a spike in coronavirus hospitalizations. Perhaps it has something to do with, I don't know, the massive amount of protesters running through your city. Nope, he's not entirely sure, he says. So listen, they know that the number of cases are going up. They just don't care if the leftists get sick and die. They just want to win the brownie points. And it's a weird circumstance because you have to imagine it'll backfire on them. I mean, these are your voters. So they support the protests. Chris Cuomo says, who says protests have to be peaceful? I mean, the First Amendment does. It says the right of the people to peaceably assemble. But they don't care. So who gets hurt by this? Well, the small businesses get hurt. The big cities are getting hurt. And they have nothing but disdain for the conservatives who have protested for their businesses. And they have nothing but disdain for the protesters in the cities who will likely catch coronavirus and many of whom will die. I can't tell you why the healthcare workers are doing it. I think it's blind tribalism. Let's read this story from Politico. They say, for months, public health experts have urged Americans to take every precaution to stop the spread of COVID-19, stay at home, steer clear of friends and extended family, and absolutely avoid large gatherings. Now, some of those experts are broadcasting a new message. It's time to get out of the house and join the mass protests against racism. Quote, we should always evaluate the risks and benefits of efforts to control the virus. Jennifer Nuzzo, a Johns Hopkins epidemiologist, tweeted on Tuesday. In this moment, the public health risks of not protesting to demand an end to systemic racism greatly exceed the harms of the virus. That's actually not true. I'm pretty sure if you take the total amount of people, of black people, who have unarmed black people who have been killed by police, it is much, much lower than the 100,000 plus individuals who have died of the coronavirus since the start of the pandemic. So I believe you're factually incorrect. Now, I can respect your opinion on the matter. You're factually wrong, though. What that means is, if they understand what they're saying, it is better that 100,000 people die of a pandemic than it is that, in their mind, racism exists. I think racism is really, really bad. But I also don't think you're actually going to change anything in a couple of weeks, but I do think you're going to contribute to mass death. So it's not even about 100,000 people. It's about you going out shoulder to shoulder, spreading this like crazy. And as they said, young people become asymptomatic carriers, which means you are doing so much more to just infect and harm the weakest of us. And they don't care. Why? Their ideology says so. The issue of racism is in many ways rooted in fact, but in many ways rooted in ideology. The issue of the pandemic could also be considered that in some ways, but is rooted in fact. We've seen a spike in deaths. We've tested for it. The tests aren't perfect. The numbers aren't perfect. Some people who didn't have COVID were claimed to have COVID. There's a lot of problems. But the point is, a virus is something we can see and track. Racism is nebulous. It changes, and even the definition changes. So your ideology, of course, you think it's more important than the lives of those around you. Here's what they say. Quote, "The injustice that's evident to everyone right now needs to be addressed. Abrar Karan, a Brigham and Women's Hospital physician who's exhorted coronavirus experts to amplify the protest's anti-racist message, told me, while I have voiced concerns that protests risk creating more outbreaks, the status quo wasn't going to stop COVID-19 either." He wrote on Twitter last week. Look at all the excuses that come out. You still can't open your business. I mean, you can sit inside of it, looking at the broken glass while protesters walk past it and smile, but you can't give them anything. You can't sell them water. You can't even let them in the building. No, they'll come and they'll shut you down. And they've done it. This is the ultimate insult to injury. Take a look at this. May 14th, only a few weeks ago, Michigan barber defying Governor Whitmer's coronavirus shutdown has license stripped. Look at this old man, a barber. Not even in a big city, nowhere near the major outbreaks of coronavirus. What were they thinking with this? New York was the hot spot, not this Michigan small town. Carl Mankey, 77, became a symbol of resistance when he opened the doors of his Owasso shop on May 4th and refused to close, pledging to keep his doors open until police arrest him or Jesus walks in, after a judge declined to sign an order to shut down his shop Monday. Without first holding a hearing, state regulators opted to suspend Mankey's barber and shop license. It is paramount that we take action to protect the public and do our part to help save lives, Attorney General Dana Nessel said. Nessel doesn't care about you. She doesn't care about saving lives. You want to know how I know? Because the governor herself is marching shoulder to shoulder. Why? Where's the outrage? Disdain. She's even wearing a mask while doing it. It's just truly amazing. Fox 2 reporting. State leaders visited Metro Detroit Thursday to march in a unity walk as protesters prepare for another night on the streets of Detroit. For the 7th straight night, protesters are gathering to march in downtown Detroit following a unity walk from state and city leaders in memory of George Floyd. What? But I thought she just said we have to do everything in our power to protect the public. What is this doing but guaranteeing the opposite? Thursday's unity walk involved Michigan residents from Highland Park to New Haven as people stood in solidarity and outrage against the death of George Floyd. They demanded change when it comes to police brutality and racial injustice in America. So here we can see the governor, look at this, even apparently the lieutenant governor. For 7 straight days, the message has been loud and clear from voices like Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. We don't have another moment to waste. We do not have a step to waste. And when our brothers and sisters, they can't breathe, we do not have a breath to waste either. Truly amazing. This is a story from Vice that shows you how the narratives make no sense and are conflicting. I can't tell you what you should and shouldn't do because I don't know what is or isn't allowed. Right now, if you went out and protested for your cause, what would they say? I'd be really interested to see what would happen if anti-lockdown protesters actually came out now. Would they say, shut down your protests? Think about what that would look like as anti-lockdown protesters are walking around and the cops come and shut them down and start making arrests, but allow the George Floyd protesters to remain. How do we have that? No idea. But I mean, it even exists simply in business form. Look at this story from Vice News. They say, do the right thing. That's what 30-year-old musician Nico Sherrard shouted at a New York City police officer before he was arrested at a protest Saturday night in Lower Manhattan. The cop was arresting another protester, Hudson Sackrider DeRicco, when Sherrard spoke up. Then he was tackled and surrounded by men in uniform. They had got me down on the ground. I was screaming, I'm a black man. Please, somebody film this. All I remember was getting punched and just seeing a group of white people with blue eyes and blue uniforms just wailing on me. As terrifying as that was, what happened next was even scarier. Sherrard and more than a dozen other protesters were thrown in a bus and transported a few blocks away to One Police Plaza, the NYPD's headquarters, where they were subject to long hours of detention in crowded confines that seemed to inevitably expose detainees to the deadly coronavirus. People were screaming, please give us our masks. They just packed us in here like sardines. There was one person who was turning red and throwing up and sweating. Someone was yelling that he had the coronavirus and they have us in here without masks on. These ridiculous people screaming they have the coronavirus, begging for masks. But that didn't stop them when they went out in the thousands, shoulder to shoulder, marching with signs. You know what? The blame goes to the police and the governments as well. New York City is also on the hook for all of this. The mayor defended his daughter when she went out and protested. These people have no morals. They have no principles. This is what you can expect. Now, listen, there are a lot of good people who don't know better. They're being exploited. I've talked to some of my friends and I've asked them, why would you support this? And to be honest, many of them didn't understand or know that there were protesters who wanted their businesses back. They didn't know. Why? No, the media lied to them. That's what is happening. The media lies and these people don't read the news and they don't fact check and they don't know better. Fortunately, social media exists, at least in this regard, that we can share what's really happening and challenge the false narratives. Too many people, however, only get one side of the story. They say, this is a lot different from someone wanting a haircut, Tim. Yes, some people wanted haircuts, but more importantly, people wanted their businesses back open. But shouldn't people be allowed to choose if they can get a haircut or not anyway? What will you accomplish? And why is your ideology more important than another person's? That's the big challenge. I understand the Black Lives Matter protests, but how can you as a government say one ideology is better than another? How can you as a government say this person is morally justified and this person isn't? You can't. All people must be viewed equally under the law. Instead, the media uses cultural pressure and they don't actually care. The bigger issue isn't so much the media to it, I'll admit. While I think it's funny that CNN and, Brian Stelter and Jim Acosta are freaking out about social distancing props, the really scary thing is government. Mayor Bill de Blasio only last month said no protesting allowed. Now he's celebrating his daughter for protesting. Gretchen Whitmer said to this barber, no, you can't open your business. I'm doing this for your safety. She called the protesters white supremacists. Now she is out marching shoulder to shoulder. It's what you can expect. Rules for thee, but not for me. They are propping up a reactionary left that doesn't care about anything other than winning for the tribe. And those who have real things they need to do with their lives, their companies, their families, are being told no. In the end, law-abiding citizens are punished while people who flaunt the law are praised. If this is the system we live in, where the media is praising those who would violate the rules and condemning those who have legitimate reasons that the rules should be changed, why would anyone trust the establishment? They've lost all credibility in this regard. Bill de Blasio acting like he doesn't understand why people are getting sick is one of the funniest things you can ever see. But it shows you that, come on, he's lying. Have you seen the viral video of the man running around telling white women to kneel before him? And they do. It's because people are scared of the mob. I think Bill de Blasio knows full well why this is happening. I just think he's scared that he'll be called all the naughty words and then it will end his career. Well, they're already calling for you to resign, man. So I don't see what you think you're fighting for. Here's what Vice goes on to say. Arrested demonstrators, lawyers, and the activists who take care of the released protesters told Vice News that protesters have been unable to stay 6 feet apart from one another in cramped holding pens and cells of police facilities, including one police plaza. No one reported being given a mask or any personal protective gear while in custody, and many said the police themselves rarely wore masks. Water was scarce. Quote, I don't know that the NYPD is purposefully trying to give protesters the coronavirus, but I think it makes it that much more urgent to try to get people through the system, said Rebecca Heinzen, a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society who works in Manhattan. Or, I mean, they should be not making these arrests. Shouldn't the protesters not be outside? Why is it always that your side is right? The media is being infiltrated by activists, and this is why the narrative is such. Jim Acosta is an activist. Brian Stelter is an activist. They care only for making money, and they won't tell you the truth. And the truth is, if Black Lives Matter protesters want to go out, I think they should be allowed to do it. If anti-lockdown protesters want to go out and protest, they should be allowed to do it. In all likelihood, it will create a risk for coronavirus, but the First Amendment doesn't stop at whether or not you might get sick. Now, there may be special emergency declarations that happen. That's fair. The government may intervene. But how can we function as a society when the government targets one side and gives special benefits to the other? We can't. The media won't tell you that. They'll just tell you they're morally just. They'll try and wash away why it's happening and create strange justifications as to why they're right. And then the narrative collides. The protests are okay, but it's the police's fault when they get arrested that they're going to get coronavirus. Okay, got it. Businesses are being destroyed overnight. If you have no stuff, then how do you buy stuff? If businesses can't operate, services can't be rendered, there's nothing for anyone to do. It would seem like, regardless of why it's happening, the result is the complete and total collapse of, for the most part, major cities, and then some more suburban areas. Because business is gone. I mean, look, jobs are coming back. This is good news. But it really does seem like Democrats want to make sure this lasts forever. Think about it. You know, they say the police want people to get sick. Yeah, well, that's a Democrat city, right? NYPD. Why would they want that? Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. Force mail-in voting because they're still calling for mail-in voting, right? And they will. And it'll happen. Yeah, just watch. Just watch. They're going to say, oh, no, coronavirus. I wouldn't be surprised if in a month they were like, you know, we should have told people to be more careful during these protests. They'll say it. They'll say it to save face. But right now, it seems like they're going to get what they want. They've destroyed these local businesses. So now people's lives are completely ruined. They blame Trump for that. They then told all the protesters who want their businesses back that you're a bunch of morons and blocked their cars. They blamed Trump for that. They really did. Now the protesters are out in the street and they're angry. And these governments, these local government officials are praising it. And they are still blaming Trump for this. And that's what you can expect. Come November, everything that happened will be Trump's fault. These people will get sick again, and no one's going to write up a story blaming Democrats for it. No, not for the most part. It might appear, here and there. But now that we're likely to see a big spike in coronavirus cases, they'll say, we knew the risks, but it was important. And now that everyone's sick again, we need mail-in voting. And then what happens? I don't know, man. Long shot prediction. The election will happen. It doesn't matter who wins, Trump or Biden. But if anomalies occur due to mail-in voting, then neither side will accept the results. And then where that goes, I honestly have no idea. But I can only imagine it doesn't go to a pretty place. I imagine things will get pretty dangerous. And you won't, unfortunately, you won't enjoy it. Now, some people have speculated once again that Trump won't accept the results of the 2020 election. Same thing they said with 2016. However, I think right now, based on what we're seeing, these are surface level manipulations. The media is lying and ignoring the true story. They are facing intense pressure to bend the knee to fringe claims like fringe ideologies that suggest abolish the police. It's not an exaggeration. I'll have a story coming up for you at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. And we're going to talk about how our major media institutions are now bending the knee for insane ideology that makes no sense. They're literally saying abolish the police. I am not exaggerating. I'll tell you this, though. With everything you've just seen, there are Americans who can see what's happening and can see the double standard. Combine that with Joe Biden, maybe, but the left certainly is, adopting the rhetoric, abolish the police. Far leftists, Ilhan Omar, for instance, has already said disband the police. If Joe Biden adopts abolish police as a principal campaign promise, Trump could stop campaigning today and win 530 electoral votes. We'll see how things play out. Stick around. Next segment will be at 6 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all there.